The day my grandfather died, my family changed the locks on his house in 11 hours. I know it was 11 hours because I was the one driving up from Burlington to be with him at the end, and the call came through at 6 in the morning. He passed in his sleep at 5:42. I got to the farm at 9:30. By 5 that afternoon, my own mother was standing in the doorway of the farmhouse I had spent every summer of my childhood in, telling me I was not allowed inside. She had a key in her hand that did not belong to her. The lock on the front door was new. The brass plate around it was so freshly cut into the old wood that I could see the sawdust still on the porch floor. "Magdalena," she said, "your grandfather did not leave you anything. He told us what he wanted. The house is mine and your aunt's. The land is going to your cousin Trevor. There is no point in you being here. Go home." My suitcase was still in the car. I had brought a black dress for the funeral. I had brought a casserole my roommate had made me because I had not been thinking clearly when I left, and casseroles are what you bring to a death. I was 29 years old. I was a licensed veterinary technician. I had spent the last 3 years driving up to that farm every other weekend to help my grandfather with the animals, because his hands were getting bad, and he was the one who had taught me everything I knew about taking care of living things. And my mother was standing in his doorway, telling me he had left me nothing before his body was even cold. My name is Magdalena Halloran. People who like me call me Maggie. People who do not like me, which includes most of my family, call me by my full name in a voice that makes it sound like a punishment. The story I'm about to tell you is about what happened 9 days after that locked door, in a small lawyer's office in a town of 2,000 people, when my grandfather, who had been dead for over a week, sat us all down and explained, on a video he had recorded 6 months before he died, exactly what he had been watching. Before I tell you what was on that video, hit subscribe and tell me one thing in the comments. Tell me about the one person in your life who saw you clearly when nobody else did. Just their first name, or the relationship, or the room you were in the first time you realized somebody actually understood you. I read every single comment. Now let me take you back to that porch. I stood there for a long time. My mother did not move. After a while, my Aunt Bridget came up behind her, holding a cup of coffee in one of my grandmother's old mugs, the green ones with the chipped rims. My grandmother had been dead for 14 years. The mugs lived in a cabinet next to the stove. My aunt had walked into the kitchen and helped herself like the kitchen was already hers. "Maggie," my aunt said, "don't make a scene. The funeral is on Saturday. You can come to that. You don't need to be in the house." I asked them where my grandfather was. I asked who was with the body. I asked if anybody had called the funeral home yet. "Of course we have," my mother said. "We are handling everything. You don't need to worry about it." I asked if I could just come inside for a minute. I told them I needed to use the bathroom. I had been driving for 2 hours. I was telling the truth. My mother said no. My aunt said the bathroom was being used. They said it like they had rehearsed it. I realized then that they had rehearsed it. They had been on the phone all morning while I was driving up, planning exactly what they were going to say to me when I arrived. I walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. I did not cry. I had not cried about my grandfather yet. I have a thing where I cannot cry until I am alone, and I had not been alone yet that day, between the call and the drive and the porch. I sat in my car and I looked at the farmhouse where I had learned how to bottle feed a calf when I was 6, and I tried to figure out what to do. I called my friend Esme. Esme runs a small bed and breakfast in town. She and my grandfather had been close. He used to bring her eggs from his chickens every Friday morning, and she used to bake him a small loaf of cinnamon bread in exchange. When she heard my voice on the phone, She started crying before I had finished my sentence. She told me to come straight to her place. She told me she had a room. She told me not to worry about anything, that I was family to her, that my grandfather had been her friend for 30 years, and I was his, and that meant I was hers now. I drove to Esme's. I sat in her kitchen. She made me tea. She did not ask me a single question for the first hour. Then, when I was ready, she let me talk. I told her what had happened on the porch. Esme listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "Maggie, your grandfather did not leave you nothing." "How do you know?" "Because he told me 3 years ago what was in his will. He wanted somebody outside the family to know, in case anything happened. He sat at this table, in that chair you are sitting in right now, and he told me everything. Maggie, he left you everything. The house, the land, the savings. He left your mother and your aunt enough to be polite. He cut your father out completely. He cut Trevor out completely. He had been planning it for years." I put the cup of tea down. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, a dog was barking somewhere on the street. Why didn't he tell me? Because he did not want you to live the next 5 years of your life waiting for him to die. He wanted you to come up to the farm because you wanted to see him, not because you wanted what he had. He told me he had watched what your mother and your aunt had done with their inheritance from your grandmother, and he did not want you to become that. So he kept it quiet. The lawyer has a copy. The will is filed. Whatever your mother told you on that porch was a lie. The reading is in 9 days. I asked her how she could be sure my mother was lying. Esme looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "Maggie, your grandfather and I had a deal. If anything happened to him, and his family did not call me within 24 hours, I was supposed to call the lawyer myself. They have not called me. I have been waiting all day. The lawyer's name is Solomon Pereira. He is in town. I have his number. I am calling him in the morning." I have to tell you about my grandfather, because if you do not know him, the rest of this story will not land the way it should. Frank Halloran was a veterinarian for 51 years. He worked the same rural practice his whole career. He treated cows in the morning, dogs in the afternoon, horses on weekends. He drove an old green truck that he replaced exactly twice in his lifetime. He never went on a real vacation. He did not believe in them. He believed in showing up to work, taking care of animals, and going home to read books at night, with his glasses on the end of his nose and his bare feet on a footstool he had made himself in 1974. He married my grandmother when he was 26. They had 2 daughters, my mother, Rosalind, who became a real estate agent and developed a personality to match, and my Aunt Bridget, who married a man with money and spent 40 years pretending the money had been hers. My grandparents loved both their daughters, the way you do, even when the daughters turn out to be people you would not have chosen as friends. When my grandmother died, my grandfather went very quiet for about a year. Then he took up baking. He had never baked anything in his life before that. He started making bread once a week, then twice. Then he learned how to make pies. By the time I was a teenager, he was famous in his small town for showing up at funerals and weddings with a homemade pie nobody had asked for, made from fruit he had grown himself, in a crust that was always slightly imperfect, but always exactly right. He was the only adult in my life who ever asked me a question and waited for the actual answer. My mother asked questions she already knew the answer to. My father asked questions because he was making conversation. My grandfather asked questions because he was curious about your answer, and he would sit there as long as it took for you to find it. He listened the way most people do not listen. He noticed the things most people do not notice. When I was 12 years old, I broke my arm falling out of a tree on his property. He said it himself, gently, before driving me to the hospital because he said the ride was 40 minutes and he did not want me in pain that long. While he was wrapping my arm, he said, "Maggie, you are the kind of person who is going to spend her whole life climbing trees. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. Just learn how to fall. Falling is the part everyone forgets to teach." I have remembered that for 17 years. The reading of the will was on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. Mr. Solomon Pereira's office was on the second floor of a building that had been a hardware store before he had bought it 20 years ago. You walked up a narrow staircase. The walls were painted a soft yellow. There was a small waiting room with 2 chairs that did not match. I got there at 9:45. My mother was already in the waiting room. My aunt was next to her. My cousin Trevor, who is 26 and has the personality of a man who has never been told no, was sitting across from them, looking at his phone. My father was not there. My uncle, Aunt Bridget's husband, was not there. They had not been invited. The will reading is not a public event. The lawyer invites the named beneficiaries. The fact that my father had not been invited told me that Esme had been right, and the fact that I had been invited told me she had been very right. My mother saw me come in. She did not speak. She turned her head slightly, the way a horse does when it sees something it does not want to look at directly. My aunt actually rolled her eyes. Trevor smirked. I sat down across from them. I did not say anything. The receptionist offered me water. I took it. At 10 o'clock, Mr. Pereira opened his office door and asked us to come in. His office was small and orderly. There was a desk. There was a wall of bookshelves. There was a small television on a rolling cart in the corner of the room, which I noticed when I walked in but did not understand the meaning of. Mr. Pereira was in his early 70s, with white hair and the kind of face that looks like it has been listening to people tell their family secrets for 40 years. He gestured for us to sit. There were 4 chairs. I sat down. My mother and my aunt sat together. Trevor sat next to my aunt. Mr. Pereira sat behind his desk. He had a thick folder in front of him. He did not open the folder. "Before we begin," Mr. Pereira said, "I have an instruction from your father-in-law, your grandfather. He recorded a video 6 months before his death. He asked me to play it before reading any document. He was very specific. He said if I read the will first, the family would interrupt, and the video would lose its meaning. I am asking all of you, in his memory, to please stay seated until the video is finished. I will read the will after." My mother said, "What video?" Mr. Pereira said, "I am about to show you, Mrs. Halloran. Please stay in your seat." He stood up. He walked to the television cart. He took a small disc out of the folder. He put it into a player attached to the television. He pressed a button. The screen came on. And there was my grandfather. He was sitting in his own kitchen, in the chair he always sat in, with the green mug in front of him. He was wearing the blue flannel shirt he wore when he was not working. His hair was the same white I had known my whole life. He looked tired. He looked thin. He had been sicker than he had told me that day 6 months earlier, and the realization of that hit me in the chest like a small stone. "If they told you I left you nothing, Maggie," he said, "I want you to know that they are lying. And I want you to know that I planned for them to lie. Because if they are lying, that means I was right about who they were. And it means this video is going to do exactly what I made it for." My mother made a small sound. She did not interrupt. I could see her hands. They were shaking. My grandfather went on. He said, "I am going to talk for a little while. I want you all to listen. I have been quiet for 40 years. I am going to use this last chance to say what I should have been saying the whole time." He looked into the camera. It felt like he was looking right at me. It felt like he was also looking right at them. He said, "Rosalind, my daughter, you are 48 years old. I have watched you, since your mother died, treat your own daughter like an inconvenience. You were a good child. You were a kind child once. I do not know what happened to you. I do not know what you wanted from me that I did not give you. I am sorry if I missed it. But I have watched you, for 14 years, work very hard at making Maggie feel like she did not belong in our family. I want you to know that I saw it. I saw it every Christmas. I saw it every time you talked about her in the third person while she was in the room. I saw it the year you forgot her birthday on purpose, and then told her you had been too busy with Trevor's graduation to remember. I saw all of it. I never said anything, because I thought you would grow out of it. You did not grow out of it. So now I am saying it on a video, because I am dead and I cannot be argued with anymore." My mother had her hand over her mouth. "Bridget," my grandfather said, "my other daughter. You took your mother's good silver out of the house the day after she died. I watched you do it. I did not stop you because I wanted to see if you would put it back. You did not. I have a list, in the file Mr. Pereira has, of every item you have removed from this house over the last 14 years. I have receipts from when I bought them. I have photographs from family Christmases when they were still in the house. I have a list. The total value, by my estimate, is somewhere around $46,000. You took most of it after your mother died, when you thought I was too sad to notice. I noticed." Aunt Bridget had gone completely white. "Trevor," my grandfather said, "you are my only grandson. I have tried, since you were a small boy, to find something in you to admire. I am sorry to tell you this on a video, but I have not found it yet. You are 26 years old. You have never held a job longer than 5 months. You stole $300 from my dresser drawer when you were 20, and I let you believe you got away with it because I was curious whether you would steal again. You did. You stole my late father's pocket watch from the same drawer 2 years later. You sold it. I tracked it down. I bought it back. It is in a safe deposit box at the bank. Mr. Pereira has the key. It is going to your cousin Maggie." Trevor said, "What the?" Mr. Pereira raised his hand. Trevor stopped talking. My grandfather paused on the screen. He took a sip of something from the green mug. Then he looked back into the camera. "Maggie," he said, "I am sorry I did not tell you any of this in person. I want you to understand why. I did not want you to spend your last few years with me knowing how bad it had gotten. I wanted those years to be ours. I wanted us to be in the barn with the animals, and at the kitchen table with the bread, and on the porch in the evenings. I did not want you sitting across from me, trying to figure out how to comfort me about your own mother. So I kept it to myself. And I made this video instead, so that you would know, after I was gone, that I had been paying attention. I was crying by then. I do not cry easily, but I was crying then. Everything I have, Maggie," my grandfather said, "goes to you. The house, the 240 acres, the savings, which is more than your mother thinks it is because I never told her about the investment account I started in 1987, the truck, the animals, the books, all of it. There are some specific items I have noted in the will for friends. There are small amounts I have left for your mother and your aunt because I do not want you to inherit a war. But the bulk of what I built in 51 years of working goes to you. Because you are the only person in my family who ever showed up at my house just to see me. The rest of them came when they wanted something. You came Because I was your grandfather. That is the simplest reason in the world to leave somebody everything. I hope you will understand." He smiled a small smile. It was the smile I had been looking for in his face the last time I had seen him alive. I had thought that morning that he had not smiled at me, and it had bothered me. Now I knew. He had been saving the smile for the camera. He had been saving it for me to see after he was gone in a small lawyer's office in front of the people he had been protecting me from. "One more thing, Maggie," he said. "Mr. Pereira is going to give you a sealed envelope after this video. Open it when you are alone. Open it when you are ready. Do not open it in front of anybody. What is in that envelope is between you and me. It is something I have known for 30 years and never told anyone. You can decide what to do with it. You will know what I mean when you read it. Take your time. There is no hurry." He looked at the camera one more time. He said, "I love you, kiddo. I will see you in the trees." The video ended. The room was completely silent for what felt like a long time. Mr. Pereira pressed a button on the television. The screen went dark. He walked back to his desk. He sat down. He opened the folder. I want you to picture the room for a second. My mother was crying without making any sound, the way she had cried at her own mother's funeral, with her shoulders very still and her face wet. My Aunt Bridget was sitting straight up in her chair, with her hands in her lap, staring at the wall behind Mr. Pereira's head. She was not breathing. I do not mean that as an exaggeration. She had stopped breathing. I watched her for almost a full minute, and her chest did not move. Trevor was looking at his phone, not because there was anything on his phone, but because he was 26 years old and he did not know what else to do with his eyes. He kept scrolling through a screen that was not loading. I was the only person in the room who was not falling apart. I should have been falling apart too. He had been my favorite person on earth, and I had just heard his voice for the last time, and I had heard him say things to my mother that I had been waiting 20 years to hear somebody say. But I was not falling apart. I was very still. I felt like I was watching the room from somewhere just behind my own head. I felt like my grandfather was sitting next to me, the way he used to sit next to me on the porch in the summers, with his hand on the back of my chair, just so I would know he was there. Mr. Pereira began to read the will. I'm not going to tell you everything that happened in the next 90 minutes. I will tell you the important parts. Mr. Pereira read the document. He confirmed everything my grandfather had said. He produced the list of items my aunt had taken from the house with photographs and asked her to return them or pay for them. He produced documentation of every dollar Trevor had taken or stolen. My mother tried to interrupt twice. Mr. Pereira very politely told her she was welcome to leave, but she was not welcome to interrupt. My mother stayed. When the reading was over, Mr. Pereira handed me a sealed envelope. He shook my hand. He said he had been my grandfather's friend for 40 years and that I looked like him in the way I held my mouth. I did not know what to say. I thanked him. I walked out of the office. My mother and my aunt and Trevor were behind me. None of them spoke to me. They got in my mother's car. They drove away. I have not heard from any of them since that morning, except for one letter from my mother, which was 3 pages long and did not contain an apology. I read it once. I did not respond. I drove back to Esme's. I sat in her kitchen. I drank tea. I held the sealed envelope in my hands for an hour without opening it. I turned it over in my hands. I ran my finger along the seam. He had sealed it with the brown paper tape he used for everything, the same tape he used to wrap Christmas presents and patch a tear in the chicken coop screen and label the jars in his pantry. The paper of the envelope was thick and slightly yellow. He had written my name on the front in his small, careful handwriting, the same handwriting I had been seeing on cards and notes my whole life. He had not written Maggie. He had written Magdalena. He had only ever called me Magdalena when something serious was being said. Esme did not ask me what was in it. She let me sit. She refilled my tea twice without speaking. After a long time, I went up to the room she had given me, and I closed the door, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and I opened the envelope. I read what was inside 3 times before I put it down. The first time, I read it for the words. The second time, I read it for the meaning. The third time, I read it because I could not believe it was still there on the paper. I read it again later. I have read it many times since. It is folded in a small wooden box my grandfather built when he was 70, which he kept on his nightstand, which is now on mine. I am not going to tell you what was in the envelope. I am keeping that between my grandfather and me. He told me to. I will say only this. What was in the envelope was a piece of information, very personal, very old, that completely changed how I understood myself and where I came from. It explained things I had wondered about my whole life. My grandfather had carried it for 30 years and had told nobody, not even his wife. He had decided in his last 6 months that I was the only person who should know it, and that the choice of what to do with it was mine. I have not told anyone what was in the envelope. I may never tell anyone. But I want you to understand the shape of the gift. My grandfather gave me a house and 240 acres and his savings, and that was the inheritance everybody saw. The thing he gave me in that envelope was a different inheritance entirely. He gave me the truth about something nobody else had been brave enough to tell me. That is a kind of inheritance most people never receive. Most families bury their secrets with their dead. He left his with me. He trusted me with it. That trust is worth more than the land. I moved into the farmhouse 2 months later. I left my apartment in Burlington. I kept my job at the veterinary clinic, but I started driving in 3 days a week instead of being in town full-time. I learned how to manage the property. I hired a part-time farmhand named Wilder, who is 23 and has more sense than most people I know. I keep a few cattle, a few goats, and the chickens my grandfather kept. Esme still gets her eggs every Friday morning. I bring them in the green truck. I do not bake bread yet. I am not ready. My grandfather's old apron is hanging in the kitchen. Maybe in a year. Maybe in 2. I want to tell you what I have learned, because I think you need to hear it. When somebody loves you, they pay attention. They notice. They keep small records about your life that you do not even know they are keeping. They remember things. They watch what is happening to you, even when you do not realize they are watching. The greatest gift somebody who loves you can leave behind is not their money or their house or their land. It is the proof that you were not imagining it. The proof that the things you saw, the slights you noticed, the way your mother spoke to you in front of guests, the way your aunt looked through you at Thanksgiving, the way your cousin took without asking and never thanked anybody for anything. The proof that all of it was real, that somebody else saw it too, that you were not crazy, that you were not too sensitive, that you were not making things up. For a lot of us, the people who hurt us spend our whole lives telling us we are imagining it. They tell us we are dramatic. They tell us we are difficult. They tell us we are looking for problems. And the slow accumulation of those lies is enough to make most people start to believe it. Most people, by the time they are 30, have forgotten how to trust their own eyes. The damage is done by then. The version of you that knew what you were seeing when you were 8 has been talked out of seeing it by the time you are old enough to do anything about it. If you are lucky, Somewhere in your life, there is a person who keeps the records, who does not buy the lies, who watches with you. My grandfather kept records for me for 14 years. He never told me he was doing it. He left them in a folder for a lawyer to read out loud after he was gone, because he wanted me to know, on the worst day of my life, that I had not been imagining anything. Not one moment of it. He had seen it all. He had been on my side the whole time. He had just been waiting for the moment when his being on my side could finally do something. Find the people in your life who keep records. Hold them tightly. They are not always the people you would expect. Sometimes they are not even your family. Sometimes they are an old neighbor, or a friend's mother, or a coworker who sees more than they say. They are the ones who, when something terrible is happening to you, are quietly writing it down. They are the ones who, 10 years later, will say, "You were not crazy. That did happen. I remember it." They are worth more than any inheritance. They are the proof that your life was real. Find them. Thank them. Tell them you saw them seeing you. I want to leave you with one question before I go. Tell me in the comments the smallest thing somebody who loved you ever did that you have never forgotten. Not the big things, the smallest thing. The cup of tea, the way they remembered your favorite flower, the note they left on the counter, the phone call on the random Tuesday. Tell me the smallest thing somebody who loved you ever did that you carry with you still. I will be reading every comment. I will see you in the next one.